around an hour discussion. So you as the speaker and me will be discussing in around 30 to 40-ish minutes, and then we'll throwing to the floor for everyone to get involved and ask any questions you have to Yu. The chat is available for everyone to get involved in asking questions or giving feedbacks. First thing first is that we'll be recording our sessions today. So if you have an issue on that and don't feel comfortable to be recorded, you can ask the question in the chat, and then the host from Gueari Galeri, and today we will be hosted by Ari and Karen. They will be the one that taking the notes from the chat, from your guys' questions.
The internet is quite unstable here. Sorry about that.
Yu, I cannot be any more happy to see you back online. Okay, so everyone, thank you for the patience. Hopefully everyone's still here. So Yu, it's just for a brief. Well, Karen and Ari can talk more about Gueari Galeri after our talk. So Yu, I mentioned and I shared with the participant here. We got a couple of participants, and interestingly, we got number of participants from Jakarta, from that currently stayed in UK. There's participant here from Japan, and it's from Bangkok too, hot as always. But we like to know and we like to hear more from you, of course. So I shared your background, but maybe you can share a bit about yourself, just a tiny bit to say hi to the group, please.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Sorry about the inconvenience. The first flight being late. I'm Ari and Ganan for bringing me.
Is she off again? Is she off again? Oh, she's back there. Wow.
The internet is on and off here.
It's okay. It's quite not very clear, but you can continue.
Yeah, my name is Yu Yu Myint Than. I'm from Myanmar, and I'm also the woman photographer from women photographer collective called Thuma Collective, and also we are also running the organization called Myanmar Deitta. That's also an NGO that develops resources for local photographer and filmmaker. So we work with local photographer and filmmaker, and also we bring international artists to have like workshops, running the workshops, running artist talk, portfolio review, things like that. Yeah. So far, our gallery is closed for physical art space, and our organization is stopped for physical training. So we are planning for the online stuff like online mentorship. So we will launch the online mentorship for the Myanmar photographer in the late April.
Okay. Yeah. So well, thank you for sharing your background, and I mentioned it to the participant about your brief portfolio, your work. And also I mentioned about Myanmar Deitta and Thuma Collective. So maybe you can share a bit, well, because of this whole outbreak that interestingly kind of holding us all together, although we're sitting all across the group, because we're in our room, all of us. But maybe you can share about the work of Myanmar Deitta. Like how are you engaging with, because you mentioned here that Myanmar Deitta is a platform for photographers, but also filmmakers, right? So
yes.
how you guys are working, and maybe you can share a bit, more about the platform of Myanmar Deitta, the gallery, and also how it can link to Thuma Collective as a platform for women's photographer.
First of all, I wear two hats. I'm also representative from Myanmar Deitta, and I'm also from Thuma Collective. First of all, Myanmar Deitta, Myanmar Deitta was founded in 2013, and then we started like a gallery, and then we registered as a local organization, and then our main the first step is like more like gallery, but later we trying to expand the educational program, like workshops. We start with a very short workshops, and then we try to extend like more advanced and more longer period, because we in the region we have lots of like short workshops, like 3 days workshop, 5 days workshop, 1 week workshop, but after the end of the workshop, the participants doesn't have the platform to show, and also the participant is not very sustainable. When the mentors left, it's kind of like they don't have the platform. The local photographer, they don't have the platform to show, and also they don't want to. They don't have the opportunity to learn, extend the learning scope. And so we for this year. Do you hear me?
Yes. I'm sharing the screen from Myanmar Deitta. This is the website, right?
Yeah, for this current year, starting from last 2 years, we extended more for the formal photo education, because in Myanmar, we don't have institution like art school, even the journalism school, we don't have photography department. So it's like most of the photographer, we are mostly like self-taught. And for example, my experience, if I want to learn photography, so my first step is like to work as a fixer for the international photographer when they come to Myanmar. This way we try to extend our learning scope. And so by having the education platform is also benefit for the local photographer. And also, for example, when the assignments comes, when the international assignments come, for example, we have a lot of stories to discover, but sometimes, most of the time, international photographer who is sent to cover this news, the stories, but we have that capacity in the local photographer. So by building up this capacity, and also we can also hear the inside story more deeper telling stories. So we want to focus more on education side. But last year we tried to focus on the women and photography empowerment, and so we collaborate with Thuma Collective. We got a grant together with Thuma Collective and Myanmar Deitta from funding together, and so we set up like a proper 7-month education program for the contemporary photography. So we bring in the different photographer from international photography scene, like not only just one aesthetic. For example, in Myanmar, we are mostly influenced by the photojournalism, not only. So that's why we're trying to bring more contemporary photography and fine art photography. And so we trying to have like various photographer for our mentors, and we trying to have that our program like 7-month program. So the several masterclasses, and we have also online mentorship for 3 months, and all the participants are also working on 3-month long projects together with the mentorship from those mentors. And then this March and April is the end of the program. We plan to bring the editing course and also photo book workshop course, but because this Corona things happened, and so we kind of like postponed it, and most of the program are on hold. Okay. And so for the side of Myanmar Deitta education side, from that 7-month program is kind of on hold, but our mentors are very generous. They are still communicating with the participants. So most of the participants are shooting at home, and so maybe also shooting home is also kind of like another layer of stories. Maybe if we can bring all the story together at home, maybe we can bring the collective voice of being in this situation in Myanmar during this Corona time, because experience of being in home is also can very country to country, person to person, and family to family. So maybe we can bring something out of it.
That's very true. That's very true. Okay, so, well, it's very interesting. And I'm sharing with everyone here the Instagram account of Thuma Collective. Everyone can take a look inside. So I'm gonna stop sharing for now, and back to you. Maybe just a bit back to what you're saying before. So Myanmar Deitta itself, and you as the education director in Myanmar Deitta, Myanmar Deitta exists in Myanmar as an education platform, since what you're saying, that there's a lot of interest in photography, but there's no like a platform for everyone to get involved, to get the right knowledge about photography and how to do a storytelling itself through photographer and also through films. And you as part of Myanmar Deitta exist to fill in the gap. And that's very interesting. And now I wonder, are you opening the opportunity for everyone outside of Myanmar to be involved in Myanmar Deitta? Since you mentioned about the classes now, try to engage to different things since everyone is online now.
Most of our program mostly scholarship based, and so we go first to our domestic student, and so scholarship only for the Burmese students. But for the next year, we're trying to extend, like open for the international photographer, but maybe pay costs. For example, we are trying to bring the photo bookmaker from Japan. We are planning, and so maybe we can also open the opportunity for the regional photographer for the to join the course. But for those that we are quite during the tight budget, we are more for the local photographer. But we, if our organization grow, we will plan to extend for the regional photographer. For example, last year we did a workshop with Valentina from Akina Book Publishing. So we, the book workshop, most of the book workshop are quite expensive. Like mostly it will cost like $350 to $500 something. But with the funding from our Women Photography Grant, and we reduced the price of the book workshop to $150, and so that will also cover for the regional photographer, like Southeast Asian photographer could also apply last year. So together with Myanmar photographer, they got like a discounted prices, like $150 for a workshop. So one of our friend from Bangkok called Wasamun, June Wasamun, she also joined last year workshop. So we trying to expand a little bit more and more. And so we are trying, not fully, but hopefully,
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Now, everyone, since there's a lot of us here from Indonesia, there's from Myanmar, from Thailand, and from Japan, it's actually interesting to have, since it's a very interesting platform to exist and fill in the gap for the needs and demand for everyone to be involved in photography and filmmaking, to do the storytelling from their own personal point of view, and making it more like in region, as there as part of the Southeast Asia and Eastern Asia. We have our own perspective, and maybe there's interesting here because it's interesting here because there's some of the participants here that's from Indonesia, from Myanmar, but currently staying abroad. Maybe then after this discussion, all of you can share more how being outside of your original background or community that you're coming from, it's giving perspective in seeing things, right? And it's always good to share more about it.
Yeah.
And maybe to go on that point,
Yeah,
I'll go to Yu's work that in one of her work, Jigsaw. I shared with the participant before from Yu's website. Maybe you can share more about your work specifically on how to share a story when you're not coming from that community or being the other.
I started photography like a journalism, reportage documentary photographer, but I'm now more and more into personal documentary photographer. So mostly come from personal. So this Jigsaw is like the Somalian community. For example, for me and Somalian is so far, so we don't have any connection.
Yeah.
We don't have any connection.
Okay.
Mostly I usually pick up the project based on my personal touch. For example, when I was in Bangladesh, I feel like I was very isolated. I was very lonely, and I was like, oh, I don't find family, or I don't find home there. And so I try to find someone who I can echo my voice. Most of my projects are like mostly my personal project, or some project I can echo myself on. So I found Somalian community very accidentally, because in Bangladesh I stayed there for 7 months, and I was in the immigration office for, I think, for 8 times to extend my visa. It's very bureaucratic. So 8 times. One time I have to spend like 3 hours there in city, and I accidentally met with a bunch of like Somalian friends there. And then during this day we hang out and we have tea, and then they invited me home, and I go there, and then I often hear their experience of like how they were discriminated and how they were treated in the class, and nobody talked to them in the class, and this kind of stuff. And also, so that makes me feel I can echo my feeling in it, but I'm not sure with that, and I don't want to be projecting too much of my emotion. But so I spend most of the time with them. I stay there. I live with them I stay there overnight with them, and then I'm more and more like interested in their how they deal with the isolation, like alienation. And then I gain trust with them, and I start to shoot their inside story in their home and within their community. So it's like more like collaborative project with me and the Somalian community in Bangladesh, not just me projecting myself. And also they also participated, and they also collaborated with me in that project. Is quite valuable for me.
Yeah. Well, it's getting more, I think I use excited word too often, but it is very excited. And what you're mentioning about feeling alienated, and you mentioned about after involving yourself in, you once, in your profile, it was mentioned that you work in Myanmar Times before. So you work as a journalist photographer before? Yeah. So then now you are more engaged in in telling your personal story. And it's interesting when you're mentioning about that by the time you reach Dhaka, maybe if I understand it correctly, that at first it's just another excuse my French, a city condition where you need to be in the immigration office for 8 times. But in the end, you finally met this community that have their own story. And through you and through your collaboration, you can see a very rare perspective of being discriminated maybe, or being unconnected with the community that you're staying in, and to have their own inside story of experiencing all this. So you guys, participants of this today's discussion, you should go and look at Yu Yu's website. There's more about it. And more about your work. Is there anything you would like to add for other works you're published already? The Memory Lane or Promised Land?
The Promised Land is my journalistic work. That is, when I was, before being a photographer, I used to be a teacher's trainer. So I used to be teachers. I worked there as a teacher's trainer in the northern Shan state between Myanmar and China border. And so I usually spend like 3 months a year. Every year I go to give the training. Whenever I go there, I always hear, my daughters didn't disappear, or she didn't come back, or this kind of stories, and my cousin didn't come back. This is my cousin. This kind of story I always hear. And then when I become a journalist, I'm more interested in like human trafficking. So I go there again because in northern Shan state is quite. It's northern Shan state is Shan state, but there are lots of ethnic community. For me, I'm majority Burmese. I'm Burmese from the majority ethnic, majority ethnic group, and so it's like it's difficult to get a trust from the ethnic community. But thanks to my previous work of being a teacher's trainer, I already gained the trust with the community, the church leader, and so they could bring me to that trafficking group, the trafficker who bring the girls to China and who also brought the Chinese men to Myanmar to look for the girls. For example, this girl, she has been trafficked to China and she got pregnant, and then she was rescued by the Chinese trafficking police or this kind of thing. And so I could meet with the local people, and also these are the trafficking group who are going to China, and sometimes the trafficking form is very tricky. Mostly the trafficking happened with the people who trust you. For example, the people who your cousin or your auntie, those kind of people. And so the trafficking is not like in our movie, like the people wearing black, and not like that, not like a gang. From the villagers to villagers, and so it's like for me, I'm always thankful to the community there who also bring me to those trafficker group. It's not group, it's like villagers. They bring the people to China, and also they bring the Chinese men to Myanmar to look for the brides. And so that was my reportage work. That time I wasn't in a dilemma. I have my personal style of storytelling, but that time I was not confident enough to use that language, because I was like, I had a pressure. Oh, this is a huge story. This is an important story I should tell about. So whether I should use my personal style or whether I focus on this reportage. And then I end up like using this kind of reportage, but I'm now planning to go back to China and to work with my personal reaction to this issue. For me, this project is like, it's like very pilot project. Maybe that can be a solid story from the journalistic point of view, but not as an artist. I'm not very confident enough, but I'm happy to share you guys with this project, because sometimes we have like, sometimes a lot of people, the artist and photographer, we had a pressure. And what change will you bring to the community or something like that? We have been pressured with this kind of question a lot of time. And so that stage, I was like, very dilemma stage, and I was not confident enough to bring my own voice in it. And so sometimes it happens to us, but for me, later I found out more and more, if we are honest what we are doing, and our role is not to save the whole world, to do what we can, and I think it's fine. We don't need for me, my personal personal changes, I don't, my moral ethic is not to not to bring the, I'm not interested in the impact. I'm not an impact oriented photographer. I'm more into the people who I'm working. If I'm not, if I'm honest with them, and if I don't dignify them, I'm quite okay. I don't need to worry about the impact, how the impact will bring to my works and to the community. I am not that interested in. If I am honest enough with myself, if the people, okay.
Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure there's many of the participants here wants to know more about that part. There's a very important point you mentioned about whether you need to juggle between putting your point of view in looking at all of this from your personal and value that you're holding about these issues of you mentioned about being related to this whole idea of, not idea, the whole issue of trafficking and also such. So how to juggle this two. And that's one point that really struck me when you mentioned that me coming there as what role that I'm bringing to the table when I come to entering a community. You mentioned before that you, in Jigsaw book, you mentioned that you're coming to Dhaka, and here Promised Land, you're coming to the border between China and Thailand. And what changed? There's a questions that resonates, change that you want to bring. But I'll put that question in the back of your head. Maybe you can answer it later when I'll go to the last part of the discussion that you yourself is a fellow in we got a broad participant here today in our discussion. If you can share a bit about your work in Foundation, how you can get involved, and your activity there until it leads to your work in memories and human rights. So yeah, please.
Yeah, I was one of the fellow from Magnum Foundation Fellowship, Social Justice and Photography Program. When we talk about social justice, people usually say the broader area, like war, civil war, domestic violence, and like a broader area. That program really helped me to reflect what I'm doing and to know what I'm doing and to know what I want after attending that workshop, after attending that fellowship. Because I met with my mentor, Eric Gossman. We were brought to New York for 3 weeks for giving input like digital security and how to deal with the traumatized people, how to deal with your own trauma, this kind of thing. We have a lot of input training, but after that we come back to Myanmar, to our own country for 6 months, and we work on our project based on the social justice. And we have to pitch the story during that day. I pitch on the domestic violence because from my childhood background and also my family background, because of my personal experience, I'm always interested to work on the domestic violence. And then with my mentor, I think we had like 45 discussion one-to-one. He asked me why you want to work on that and what's your experience, and then during that discussion, it's like very therapeutic to me. During the discussion, I kind of like broke down all my emotion, and then my mentor knows that the reason behind I want to do the project because of my childhood trauma with my father, and so he encouraged me. You don't worry about what the program expected from you. So why don't you work on your personal story or things like that? And he encouraged me. At first, I was not convinced because it's quite difficult to tell your own story.
That's true.
But after 2 or 3 months, I could decide, oh, okay, I can do it. And then I haven't met with my father for 17 years. And so by this project, sometimes photography is a good reason to do something, to face something. It's not like people say that photography is a tool of the healing, or it's not, we cannot be healed very easily with photography. It's the kind of like bullshitting when you apply for the grant or something like that. But photography is a very good reason to encounter something you're afraid of. Like, it's a good reason to do something you cannot do. So with that project, I trying to meet with my father, and I recommunicate with my father, who I haven't met for 17 years. And then based on the personal diary, we created like a personal story, visual diary, how I try to meet with my father and how I react and how I deal with my emotion inside. And it's so it's not everybody. When I come back from Magnum, from New York, we have to, after finishing that project, I have to go back to New York and present my work, and we have to come back to Myanmar. When I come back to Myanmar, and everybody asks, oh, what's your project? And so when I share the projects, and people, most of my friends are not satisfied, because this is not social justice. It's your problem. It's your work. It's your issue. But for me, it's like, sometimes justice also happen within yourself. Sometimes you cannot find your own justice in you. And so how can you tell the people, like, I'm doing the work on the social justice, while you cannot find your own justice within you? So I think with the Magnum Foundation fellowship experience, and I become more brave enough to express myself as a photographer, artist. So yeah, so that project is called Letters to Love. It's also on my website, but I prefer as like my book form. So sometimes I have I have some projects, or this project is only for the book form. For example, my project with Sorry Not Sorry, it's more like book form, when you touch the book and how you turn the pages and how you touch the paper, and so it's more adding more different layers. So some projects I aim for the book project, and some are for general. So for that, Letters to Love is more like a book form.
Okay, so Letters to Love. Maybe I'm sharing it a bit the screen about this specific work. And well, first of all, thank you for sharing with us, Yu Yu. And some of the participants are from Gueari Galeri, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe Karen and Ari can discuss more about this later, about the work of therapeutic photography, that approach that they're using these past few programs from Gueari Galeri. That actually photography is definitely a media for you to express yourself as an artist, and as a person yourself too. There's among us here today in the participants, there's filmmakers, there's you mentioned about doing work in social justice. I know some of you are involved today, working in development sector as well, in humanitarian sector. So maybe it's interesting how maybe we're confronted with the role that we need to fulfill when we come there as a. Maybe yourself, you mentioned that you're coming back to Myanmar as a participant, as a fellow of Magnum Foundation, but at the same time, you as a daughter that experiencing that kind of issue, and this book, this photography, this media has become the way that you reconcile with yourself. And yeah, I very much agree with that. And thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
now it's all then connected together. How why you're interested in the issue of human rights in focusing on memories and everything. And we're just in the right time for a question. Maybe I want to check to the chat room. So we have numbers of participants here. If you want to ask and feeling kind of bit shy, you can type it here in the chat room. But first, maybe from Moses here. Moses write about, I agree with you, being at home. This is the one that you mentioned it before, that being at home, especially at a time like this, could be an excellent source of project inspiration for film, for photographer. And I totally agree with that. So instead of like feeling cramped that my room, my home, I need to go out, I need to see the sun, but actually it's kind of a reflective time for you to come up with. There's always something to tell, right?
Yeah.
And on that part, maybe on that part you want to share a bit, Yu Yu, about
for
specifically
example,
on this condition of all of us.
Yeah. Beside my job for my personal photography work, and I'm working on a personal memory on my childhood. Like I'm making the family out, fake family. I'm making my imaginary family based on the archive photos, not my photos, the photos from Myanmar Photography Archive. And so it's like I wanted to start it. I have been discussing with Myanmar Photography Archive for a long time, but we barely have time to look at those pictures and those things. Maybe while being at home, it's also is time to look at to start looking at those archive pictures and revisiting my diary. And so it's I think it's very soothing time to work on my project. And also, like, I brought a printer from work. I don't have a color printer at home, so I brought from work. And so I started to print, and I started to make different zines. Sometimes we make a first dummy. Sometimes we are satisfied. But for me, it's like after 2 or 3 months, I hate my dummy. And so I reprint again and re-edit. And so maybe if you have a printer at home, even with the black and white, you just print it and then just take one photo each other. Maybe you like it, you like those sequence now, but maybe tomorrow when you brush your teeth, you hate the sequence and re-edit it. It's also very beautiful, and also it's very good killing time, especially this time. It's just my tip.
Well, thank you for a tip. Well, I got tons of assignments and essay. I don't think I need more time in my life now. But it's a good idea about that. Put it there, and I know you're not asking, but I'm gonna share it a bit. When I joined Gueari Galeri and I joined their photo book course, Ari and Karen very much encouraging the participants to feel you know all that in your memory, that I remember taking that picture, I remember shooting that scene or shooting that footage, but you need to like make it like in sequence, and you holding it, you need to write it with your hand and put it on the wall, and it very much help a lot. So it's a very nice tip, guys, if you want to produce something, and you should. And also Karen asked something about something here. Is there any specific challenges as a woman working in photography area in Myanmar or an international network? Interesting question.
Yeah, I think it's a global issue, not only being Myanmar, a woman photographer, because in this industry it's like male dominated industry, and so it's always challenges. For example, we have a newsroom, we have a newspaper, the Rani, and we we can count women photographer in Myanmar, and I think it will be Indonesia will have the same experience. And also now these days we have been a lot of a project involving with women, so it's a good thing. For example, but I don't think that's also a good thing. For example, like one workshop said, "Oh, we don't have any women participants. Do you want? We want to invite your collective." What does it mean? Sometimes people encourage the women to involve in it, but I feel like it's more for the presentation. For example, the percentage. For example, like, okay, let's say in our project we have like 50 women. So I don't like this kind of attitude in the industry of photography. So it's not for the presentation, but for the professionalism, what we are doing, we are capable. For example, when the real project comes with the projects with the money, when they want to hire a photographer, they always go to the male photographer. For the project that doesn't involve with the money, like we don't need to pay the photographer, or like maybe the presentation, the projection, the exhibition. Okay, we want to include one. We don't have any women participant photographer including in this, and so it's also good that to encourage women to participate, but also this kind of attitude is also. For me, I'm not quite feeling comfortable with that. And another thing is like a women photographer in Myanmar, not only in Myanmar, in this region, we always find a lot of difficulty, but also some people also underestimate being women photographer. So, but for me, sometimes it's good. For example, when I went to the China border, so I'm Burmese, like a Burmese woman and small, and I have a camera, and then checkpoint. For example, if I'm a guy with a giant photographer with a big lens and big camera, they will stop them. But in the checkpoint, the soldiers, okay, sister, what are you doing? No, I'm here for visiting my uncle, for the church or something like that. I fool them around, and they let me pass. And so it's, I think that's also the benefit of being woman photographer. We always have disadvantages, and we always challenges, but we also have like a very advantages of being woman photographer, going inside home, like more deeper feeling, more deeper story, intimate story. We have a lot of access. So I want the industry to appreciate more of this side to what women can bring to this table. And also not only, and also I think a regional woman photographer might have experienced the same like me. For example, when I meet with the international curator from the Western from countries, mostly they said that, oh, your story doesn't look like, your story doesn't have Burmese aesthetics. Your story doesn't have Burmese style. What do you mean? What do you mean? I'm a Burmese woman photographer. I'm a Burmese. I'm a woman photographer. I'm telling my story. So what does it mean? I don't have Burmese aesthetic. So do I have to add like poverty, or do I have to add like something, a stereotypical view of the expectation of the Western perspective of looking at Myanmar? And so I think we are also challenging. We are also facing this kind of challenges. That's also one of the experience. Yeah, I think regional woman photographer also regional photographer might have also experienced this kind of scenario. And also sometimes they always expected, sometimes they ask me, why don't your work, why not your work is not woman related? So women photographer have to tell the story about women only. So that's too narrow. So guys, please look at very broadly. We can also look at the guy story from woman perspective. We can also look at the monk, like religious leader, like monks or something like. We can also look at other story like war zone from a perspective. And so it's not, some editor said, oh, we may, for example, we may need one of my friends said, we may need some photograph of woman Galeri, the woman giving birth. So why don't you go and shoot it? We women photographers can get access, but we are not only just for that. We also capable for other stories and other issues to tell about from our perspective. And so I think that's the thing I feel challenges and I feel unsatisfied with this situation. I'm quite questioning to the industry what's happening. I don't know.
Well, thank you, and I'm very much I very much agree, and I'm pretty sure everyone here in the participants are like very angry and like getting like what you're experiencing is like I just experienced the same thing but in a different sector, and there's a couple of the participant here and ask some questions, but we're sorry guys, we're not gonna be here for a long time. Maybe I'll grab some of the questions from the chat room. So if you want to type it fast, just do it now. But thank you for about the tokenistic, about only focusing on the number. It's only about what it's being seen that yes, women representation here exists. They're part of us, but no, they're actually pushing us to squeeze our perspective into the boxes that already put in place for us. And it's interesting when you're mentioning it's not only about gender issue of being a female photographer or a female artist there in Myanmar, but being like a regional photographer. A photographer that coming from Asia, from Southeast Asia, from East Asia, compare with international photographer or journalist, where Western's point of view is the one that become the benchmark of this is how you supposed to look at things. And there's a couple of the participants here that works in cultural studies too, so you guys definitely understand what I'm saying, right? Maybe they're tapping hard now, but there's questions about Letters to Love project. Where can we find the book, and do you feel some sort of closure? Bad Eyes, maybe you can explain a bit, but specifically about your books, where can we find it?
For Letters to Love, so back to the book, the photo book scene is very, very limited in Myanmar. We don't have we don't have enough publisher who are interested in photography, but thanks, we have like Myanmar Photography Archive, and who I will be collaborating in the future for the Sorry Not Sorry. Him and I, we are collaborating the work to publish in the future. So that the Sorry Not Sorry will be out, and the Letters to Love is more. I only made 5 books for the limited edition, and is 2 from me and 2 for Letters to Love. And so I have some people who I like to send, and so 2 is for sale, and 1 is for the person I represent. I want to send, and 2 is for myself. And so it's like, so Letter to Love is very personal. I cannot sell that book because it's not for sale for the massive amount. So I only make handmade Letters to Love, like only 5 copies. And also Sorry Not Sorry, I also plan, because I'm also interested in handmade book. And so that Sorry Not Sorry, I developed the demi with Valentina from Akina. And so we transform the book in, we transform the work into the book object. And so it's also very personal, about personal story on my breakup and how I deal with my breakup. And so it's also very personal, and it's also like fictional story. I created like a fictional story in the editing, and also with the handwriting, hand pasting and hand binding, and everything will be binded by me. So we are planning to work on that book in April and May, but this thing happened, and so maybe it's also on hold. And when the book is out, I will also let you know.
Wow. So get yourself prepared, guys. And
we can also do
after
photo
all,
book swap.
I'm sorry?
We can also do photo book swap. Sometimes because in this region, photo books are really expensive for us. And so sometimes I cannot buy the photo book, like very valuable photo book, like handmade photo book. So maybe this way we can, if you have a handmade book, we can book swap.
Wow, nice one. Like if it's like a broad kind of swap, maybe it's making it too expensive to send it over to different countries. But if we're happening to be in Yangon, everyone will definitely come and knock on your door and take a look at your work. And also just a bit, so maybe we're gonna do only the last 10 minutes, guys. So if you want to do a quick questions. Oh, Mimi mentioned before, one of my work is on the page that you're sharing now.
Congratulations. Thanks for participating with us.
Nice one. And also there's one about from Chizuru. Thank you for sharing. And Chizuru has just started to taking photos during this quarantine. Chizuru asks, when you go for a photo shooting, do you already have a plan what kind of scene you want to take and the storyline ahead before you do the documentation? Or do you document just various scenes at first and then structure it into a storyline later?
It depends on different project. For example, if I'm commissioned, if somebody hire me to shoot, so I know the storyline already. So, and also I also know from them, and we discuss these issues, and so I know the perspective already. And so that time it's not personal project. It's more like I am assigned to work on that issue, work on the story. For that, I have a habit. I got it from my mentor. My mentor suggested to me to write down 3 sentences what your project is about. So I write down what my project is about, 3 lines, and I underline the keyword. What's the keyword in your story? And then I visualize those keywords. So I have a list of those keywords, how I will visualize. And then another touch I do is like which mood I want to add. So it's more like anger or it's more like love. So based on the mood, I choose the language. And so that's for the commission work. For the personal work, mostly I spend more time to telling what I'm, to know what I want to tell. Sometimes we always come up with a pre-assumption, okay, this is what I thought. But when we really into the film, it's not what we thought. So at that time, I usually spend more time, at least like 1 month on a subjects, and I know my personal response on that story, and then I also write the same procedures, like, and I write down and then I visualize it, and mostly and also the mood is also very important. So for example, trafficking story, I'm not satisfied with my trafficking work because I didn't put my personal touch and personal mood in it. And so for example, if I'm working on next different next angle for that story, so this trafficking story is more about anger, so I will choose the language based on the anger, how I will execute my language, how I execute the story with what language. So we also, and for me it's like there are 2 types of photographer, like dogs and cats. Cats always know what they want, and dogs, like, they walking around and then they know what they want later. So I'm more like cat.
Okay.
So, but if you know your story, and if you choose the language or list later while you're doing, it's also fine. It's not yes or no, but my personal practice is more like a cat.
Thank you. That's a very explanatory kind of visualization about being a dog or a cat photographer. I'm definitely a dog one. I'm sorry. I'm totally I'm just like wandering around and don't know what to do, and like, oh, it actually can be something, right? So Chizuru, hopefully it helps, and I kind of writing things down about making it into 3 sentences, and then come up with the 3 keywords out of that, and from there you can start to visualize from the keywords you mentioned, and also write down about the mood you want to present. Even you mentioned even if it's a different project, when you make it more like a personal project, you still you still undergo the same process. And thank you, that's a very fine idea, and to make it more like that. And I'm pretty sure it's kind of not only for photographers, but in doing film, you kind of setting up moods to well, everyone's here is a storyteller, so what kind of mood you want to out to the world. There's a question from Finn here, Aussie mentioning about, I very much agree about tokenistic and Orientalist expectation of Western counterparts from regional photographer. I bet. And also, oh, I'm sorry. Actually, there's a first question from Moses. Who's your favorite social documentary photographers? Do you have any
my favorite
favorite?
social, I have a lot, but the person I really admire and always my good mentor is Sim Chi-yin from Magnum. So she was my mentor before, and in Angkor Photo Festival, and I really love her work. Her work is very social impact, and also her work is very personal. If you guys look at her work on her project with her grandfather, like the Roots projects, and that's also very personal and also very social documentary. So, so my role model.
Yeah, maybe you can type her name, so if we can look more while you're explaining. So she's your mentor, Sim Chi-yin?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Oki. Thank you for adding to. So
one is Sim Chi-yin, and also I really and also I really like Catherine Coney. She was I really inspired by her aesthetic, and also I really like her personal response to the bigger issue, like and also like Catherine Coney. So how works is also very personal, and if you can see, if we talk about climate change, we always see the black and white photos, and we always see like the dry zone and everything. Very, for me, it's very emotionless. When I see Catherine work, it's very personal and very poetic, and I know that that's came from her anger. That I know that came from her attachment to this nature. So I can relate more her works than other climate change work. So I really love her work. So guys, you should also check Catherine Coney's.
Okay, thank you very much. So Moses, hopefully you can look more from Sim Chi-yin and Catherine Koning too. And it's a good point when you're mentioning about thank you, about how you feel related to their work. And I think it's here as a writer, as a photographer, as a filmmaker, and all of us here that working in social justice or human rights sector, it's how to ensure that us being there, our work is related to others that hearing our stories. So And also related to that, Finn also asked a question about just wondering, how do you usually archive your photos other than photo book? Is there any media that you might use other than photo books to archive your photos?
I'm very analog person, very tactile, and I usually print my work. And it's my practice from digital photography to analog film now. And so I more archive my work by prints, but I also have like digital, but I'm very bad at digital. As you can see, I cannot log into this Zoom meeting. It takes me a long time. So I'm very bad at techniques and more like tactile and more analog. And so I also archive, and I'm also have prints at home, like in my cupboard I have prints, and I think having prints also give us like the sense of time. For example, now 2020, maybe let's say 2040, how my print will look like. I like to know, I like to feel, and I like to smell. So
Oh,
like olden days.
well, yeah. So well, it's a more subjective. It's more like a personal questions.
Yeah.
But so Finn mentioning about do you usually archive it in a different way? But you explain it that well, personally, you like to touch it. You want to like how it feels, not only looking at it from your laptop or
Yeah.
just like scroll it down, but you want to see how it feels when it's put it on the wall, and how to sequence it, like literally sequence it like one by one. And thank you, Finn. Hopefully it answer your question. So from Yu side, there's a personal things value that by printing it out. I have to work on that. You definitely need the printer first, Finn. And there's maybe other questions. We kind of want to wrap it up, guys, for the last questions, if you guys have any. And maybe while I kind of gather up for our talk today, it's very nice to hear from you, Yu Yu, of course, that and I got a lot just not only from the idea from a photographer that works in human rights issue, not just that, totally not. I learned so many things from you about positioning and positioning ourselves when we are being there inside of a certain condition. Maybe we come there at first doing a project, but we cannot dismiss our personal value towards that kind of issue, and that's where you need to juggle between the two, about that personal kind of perspective, and how to make sure that as a storyteller, you make sure that your story is related to others, and then representation is also important, and but still how to express yourself from after all of that. You need to express yourself in a very practical idea before about the keywords, mood that you want to present. It's very interesting to know. Hey, there's a lot of last question here actually. With what work do you apply to Angkor Photo? So you're involved in Angkor Photo too. Maybe you can share about more about that, you?
Yeah, I was a participant from 2016. That time I applied with two portfolio. One is the work on trafficking. Another one is the community, the people living in an old building, like a century-old building in Yangon. It's like to the touch of family or love. So I applied Angkor Photo Festival with that, and I for the Angkor Photo Festival, for Angkor workshop. I work on a project on domestic violence. Also, the time is also domestic violence. So I met with several women from villages in Siem Reap, and I explore how they encounter the domestic violence and how they come out of this darkness. So mostly the women who coming out of that domestic violence. And so that was my work during the workshop with Sim Chien and Nusha. My mentors are Sim Chien and Nusha.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So still even doing your involvement in Angkor Photo, you're working in domestic violence. And I'm looking at the participants before I wrap up again. Another thing that really important I personally get here is also about storytelling. It's a really important point that you highlighted there. And we have some participants I mentioned about in filmmaking, in photography, and also in cultural studies. And I have, I think, one of the participants working in theater, in art department also. How you mentioned there, maybe in Myanmar, there is no like a formal government supported or a well-established platform for everyone to dig in and establish their interest in art. I hear,
we have art school, but photography is not listed as art.
Okay.
That's very interesting. When I also registered my organization, so we are trying to list it in the art Ministry of Art, but they said, oh, your organization is not, photography is not art. Art is like more painting. In Myanmar, listed things are painting, sculpture, this kind of thing. Photography is not listed, and so we are now under Ministry of Information.
Okay, that's an issue, and it's a good thing too when Myanmar Deitta. So everyone, guys, you can look at in the Myanmar Deitta website too, about like to fill in the gap that actually there's a lot of people that wants to understand more and want to be involved in this specific sector, even in like art. It's only like painting, sculpture, while actually even like a poetry I'm sorry, my background is like in a different, totally in the different sector, but the issues about represent and not being represented locally and also internationally is definitely an issue. And you highlighted a very nice point there. So everyone here, you can start, do your work and fill in that gap, since maybe
yourself.
Do it yourself and make that platform for everyone to be involved. I have a participant here that doing a work in theater, and it's an issue too in Indonesia and many parts of the country. So maybe taking from Yuyu's example, we should make our own platform.
Theater club.
So if there's no more questions and we kind of maybe it's from I'm done from my side. Maybe you want to add one, 2 point to close the discussion down to you, if there's anything you want to add.
For me, being a color photographer, like being a woman, being a color photographer from the region, from this region, we have a lot of challenges. But as I shared my experience with the Western perspective of like the stereotypical view, how you tell your story. So I just want to highlight, don't filter your art. You can be angry, you can be frustrated. Maybe you can use that frustration and anger into your artwork. That's can be useful, but don't give up and don't just follow what they expect you to produce. So the journey will be difficult, but that can be a unique project for yourself. Like those kind of anger and frustration can make your project, your artwork more unique. Yeah. So that's
Thank you. Not to do, us from specifically from this region facing that challenge a lot. And thank you, Yu, for highlighting that point also, but not doing a stereotypical kind of concept that's like, this is you're supposed to be like in this tiny section. So thank you, Yu.
Thank you
Very much. This is a very fine conversation, and that technical issue up front, everybody in the whole wide world experienced that, so totally fine. And hopefully everyone, we're looking forward if Myanmar Deitta and Thuma collection posted it online for international photographer and filmmakers. Maybe we can join that
opening self-portrait context. Myanmar Deitta open for the self-portrait context. So if you are interested to take part, if you are interested in self-portrait, so just experiment, do a lot of experiment, and you can submit to us, and yeah, we can, after this period is over, like this COVID-19 is over, we will try to curate that work into the exhibition, and also we will also give prize, first prize to the winner. So just check out our Myanmar Deitta Instagram or Facebook page, and also Thuma Collective is also trying to be more active on Instagram. So because this now is like Instagram becomes like a gallery or the exhibition, the museum. So trying to be online as much as we can.
Yes, I posted Thuma Collective Instagram account in our chat room, guys, so you can take a look inside, and also Myanmar Deitta website too, and you can look inside to Yu's work in her very nice website. And now you know it's not only about pictures and story about trafficking or stories about being isolated in a new community or being alienated in a new community, but you hear the whole story behind it as you share it with us this afternoon for me, this evening for you guys, and we're in a whole different time zone. I'm in London, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And there's a couple of us here in London as well, and from Bangkok, from Myanmar, from Yangon, from Jakarta. I heard there's someone from Bali as well in Indonesia, and yeah, so we have everyone involved. Thanks again, guys. Thank you, Yu. I cannot thank you more that you here share with us with all very interesting things to share with us this time. Maybe I'll close it back to Karen and Ari to close it down, or we just like leave it now. I hate this with this whole thing happening. Usually after we close the sessions, we're gonna have like tea or drinking or biscuit together after this, but well, thanks everyone. Karen said, go ahead, Saskia. So with this opportunity, I'll close it down. Thank you, everyone. And just remember to follow Gueari Gallery too, right? This gallery is also available for everyone to know more and involve more. And Gueari Gallery is actually that kind of platform you mentioned, that you want to begin your how to tell your own personal story to the world, be a storyteller in that part, to make it engage with everyone for Gueari Gallery. Okay? So Thank you, everyone. I'm gonna leave this meeting after this. Thank you, Yu Yu. Hopefully we can. Thank you, everyone, for your involvement, and stay safe. Bye, all.